BL manga is a genre that you most likely have seen or heard of if you've been doom scrolling on forbidden websites on your free time and possibly seen my previous video where I talk about the first yaoi I've decided to read. Although after seeing how much you guys wanted me to react to more BL/yaoi content, I've decided to take a month to read your guys' recommendations, and boy, has my faith in humanity slightly gone down a bit. But for those that are new and don't know anything about BL manga, like I explained in my previous video on the Akil Senpai channel, shameless plug, boys love isn't necessarily yaoi, but rather the root romance genre where simply its key element is guys eventually falling in love with another male love interest. Some are more erotic and suggestive than others, and their target audiences are generally for female koreaboos or weeaboos, which is where I introduce you all to BJ Alex. BJ Alex is the most widely talked about BL manga, and after the first two chapters I definitely see why. In BJ Alex we follow a university student named Nam who is obsessed with a BJ or broadcasting jockey named BJ Alex. BJ Alex or G1 is somewhat of a male counterpart to your favorite streamer on Twitch, but his niche is telling adult experiences and for some reason decorating his keyboard in icing. But all this somewhat changed when Nam finds out G1's secret identity and for some reason ends up having his B card taken by his favorite streamer, because once it came time for BJ Alex to perform again on stream, let's just say a very important part of him wasn't working anymore unless he thought about a certain someone. Since this was my first BL manga that I read, it made me begin to regret this video idea that I made, but I'll be honest, this isn't the worst of them. 7.5 out of 10. Semantic Error was one of the most recommended BL manga that I should read, and it's definitely really well written. To briefly sum it up, we initially follow one of our protagonists named Sungwoo, who is a computer science major and ends up having to do a whole presentation by himself because all the other members in his group made a bunch of excuses to not help him with the assignment. After speaking with the professor, he eventually got all those people who didn't help him to receive an F-, regardless of the fact that literally one of them couldn't show up due to them having to go to their aunt's funeral. Other than that person, there just so happened to be one of the students named Jae-young in this group that was apparently away for an art ceremony overseas and really doesn't like the fact that he missed his opportunity to graduate that year because of Sungwoo, getting him to fail the only class he needed in order to move on. After some series of events and Jae-young being enraged about the situation, he eventually finds Sungwoo and makes his life hell on earth on some Dio timing by figuring out his daily schedule and doing the absolute most to make this man miserable. As time goes on, we obviously see that this character starts to develop feelings for Sungwoo, and he really starts to go above and beyond to make sure that he's now seen in a positive light by Sungwoo. And although I won't spoil everything that's in this manga, I'm a little disappointed at the fact that there's not necessarily any action at all in this, but I'm still going to give it a 9 out of 10, considering its dope art style, character designs, and the fact that it's actually a really well written story. Not to mention that there's a K-drama adaptation that I might even check out after this. Not gonna lie, before reading this, I was actually excited to read Love Gem. As someone who enjoys working out and watched a little bit of How Heavy Are the Dumbbells You Lift, I couldn't wait to... Did this guy just on his manager's jacket in the first chapter? Alright, but hear me out guys, hear me out. After reading about 6 more chapters, the story is actually kinda good, not gonna lie. The story follows our main character Do-kyun, a coach who is struggling with sales and might get fired soon until him and his manager scout out someone who would be a great prospect that is dripped out in all luxury clothes. Things end up going smooth, and the next day he shows up ready to start training so he can start looking like Baki Hanma. Once he agrees to start working out with our MC, they make a deal to go on a date if he gets his body to look like his. Even though the main character doubts the possibility of this, within a year, Min ends up doing it. And spoiler alert, they do it. And I absolutely don't recommend you read chapter 7. Uncanny Charm is probably the best one out of these that I've decided to read. And even though this is somewhat of a slower build between the main character and the love interest, what really made this manhwa to me shine are the themes alone. One day going into the basement and coming across a box full of talisman, the main character has bells stuck to him that summon spirits, and of course this would be terrifying for anyone having to go through sleep paralysis without even knowing the cause and now having the ability to see ghosts. It's a good thing our love interest, I mean the main character's love interest, comes from a family of shamans that not only the bells belong to in the first place, but has the knowledge and experience with helping the spirits pass on and even practicing exorcisms to assist the main character. Not to mention he has a mini tiger. So I'm gonna give this a 10 out of 10. The pizza delivery man in the Gold Palace was a little more wholesome and honestly just gave a slice of life kind of vibe to it. This mama follows Woo-won, who is working part-time jobs to help pay off debt and medical bills in order to help his family, and after being told to quit his first job by his boss out of nowhere, Woo-won lands a pizza delivery job where they are known to deliver to the Golden Palace, where the customers are so friendly and loaded that they end up tipping the delivery drivers really well. Keep in mind, this is extremely rare in Korea, first off, to even get tips in the first place. But some people speculate that this is due to the people that live here just have the money to throw away, but it's most likely that the people that deliver here by this particular pizza place have to be a really attractive person and woo the customers to the point where they are told to make sure that they take their helmets off before making a delivery. But anyway, there's one guy in particular named Soan that ends up catching feelings for our main character Woo, and it's all because Woo-won lent him an umbrella. Even though it sounds really basic, I'm still gonna give it an 8 out of 10 because even though this is more so just a slice of life kind of BL, there's a great amount of mystery in each chapter that makes you want to find what the F made Soan punch this guy. Is he gonna give Woo-won a bag? And considering this is somehow an erotica, when are the freaky panels gonna start? Robert X Lover is probably the most tame thing I've read this whole month, and Robert X Lover is essentially about this guy in college who needs a place to stay and ends up being offered by a classmate at his college a whole apartment in a good location in downtown Seoul at an extremely cheap price, and actually doesn't get scammed by some booty bandit. Although there's a robber, if you want to call him that, but it just so turns out he's another person that just so happens to be around the main character Jiho's age, that at first falls in love with the fan fictions he finds when breaking in, and somehow eventually ends up becoming Jiho's roommate. He shares his dark past, they sleep in the same bed, and eventually they fall in love. I know this wasn't really the script, guys, but I'm supposed to read like 20 more of these while I'm away. 8 out of 10. The final relationship is an Omegaverse story following Carlisle Frost, who is an alpha in New York City during New Year's Eve, waiting to meet with an Omega he hooks up with every year when the time comes, and finds out that he has a poor time performing due to psychological numbness, and even sees a family therapist related to the situation. Although you would think that coming from a professional that the therapist would advise our main character to perhaps practice abstinence and maybe find some other hobbies other than baking pies with Omegas all day. But no. Instead, he suggests, if you're tired of putting it in, why not just try receiving it, bro? And spoiler, that's exactly what he does for the next few chapters as it builds up a relationship between him and Ash, who is another alpha, and him experiencing what it's like almost switching roles as the one to be dominated. 9 out of 10. Dear Door. Dear Door is essentially following a police officer named Kyung-jun, who is in the first couple of chapters in pursuit of a pseudo-religious group that traps him in a burning building and almost dies until he mysteriously saved by a demon that wants to use him as a door of some kind. It's not until the next day or so that this demon shows up at his apartment, and we find out he's wounded and has a plot to kill Satan, but for some reason needs Kyung-jun's body to do so, considering that he's been weakened and is assuming a human form for the time being. The next day, Kyung-jun brings him into the station to arrest him, and from there we see exactly why this was tagged erotic. After about 8 to 10 more chapters, I moved on because not only did I have a lot of other stuff to read, but once I got to chapter 11, I knew this wasn't going to be for the weak. 5 out of 10. Bad Friend actually starts off really well and engaging, as it's a murder/cultivation type of BL manhwa, which in itself needs a video considering the fact that there's a lot of history behind the murder/cultivation genre and manhwa as a whole. But anyway, in this manhwa, we follow two people on a hunt for a mythical creature because in this universe, if you kill them, you get energy crystals that will extend your lifespan by an extra 100 years. Our two protagonists were having doubts on the whereabouts of a particular mythical beast within the area that they're in, but eventually they find a yin-yang hydra. Yin-yang hydras tend to have a very venomous poison, and once one of our protagonists gets bitten when seemingly defeating it, he gets poisoned unfortunately. After our other protagonist kills the hydra, we then find that the poison makes him extremely hot and bothered, and the only way for our protagonist to be cured is for the other to embrace his massive lightsaber. And because it was the yin head of the hydra that bit him, he needs to absorb the yang crystal through his rectum, and has to have the yin crystal pushed up his own rectum as well. Not gonna lie guys, this definitely wasn't for me. There just wasn't enough lightsabers on my screen. 7 out of 10. This is one that a lot of people were saying that I should and shouldn't read, and after deciding to bite the bullet, this was probably the most emotionally traumatizing thing that I've read. Jinx follows a 29-year-old named Kim Dun, who is struggling financially by not only being in debt to loan sharks, but also paying treatments to support his grandmother, working as a physical therapist, and working other jobs to make ends meet. It's not until he gets the opportunity to work with Ju Jae-kyun, a really successful mixed martial artist, when his life starts to turn around, because not only is Ju interested in paying Kim $5,000 to be his personal physical therapist monthly, but let's just say hesitantly, Kim made a deal to give him happy endings anytime and anywhere Ju desires, and the writer of this, who just so happens to be the writer of BJ Alex, doesn't portray this in the most romantic way possible. To briefly sum it up in a way that won't get my channel taken down, this isn't necessarily a relationship with reciprocity, but at first it's a means for Kim to survive and to help his grandmother, and even though the first 2 to 3 chapters alone, I'm sure is enough to get anybody traumatized enough to stop reading. Tell me why my dumbass actually kept reading well past another 15 chapters and got invested in the story. 9.5 out of 10. But all in all, guys, these are just some of the manhwa out of the 20 that I was able to read. And if you guys want me to talk about some more BL manhwa or yaoi you guys recommended, be sure to thumbs up this channel, subscribe, and stay tuned for the second part because I'm going to Korea to cleanse my mind.